today's scripture reading, we are like a fly on the wall. Have you ever been or wanted to be a fly on the wall? Sometimes we wish we could be privy to a conversation without being noticed, and we'd like to be a fly on the wall and hear what's going on. Other times, we are privy to a conversation and we wish we were not there, right? You know, we preachers get put up on pedestals sometimes by people, and we really should not be. It sets us up to have our humanity be a disappointment to someone, but it's an easy thing to do. I've done it myself. I recall early in my ministry, I accompanied one of my mentors and his wife on an overnight trip to a church conference that included our sharing a hotel room. And you really get to see a different part of people's lives when you share a hotel room with them. This gentleman was my pastor at the time, and I still had at that point some illusions that pastors and their families just operated at a different level than the average people. Well, we got back to the hotel room after the evening session of the conference, and the pastor and his wife got into a heated argument right in my presence. And I thought, oh my goodness, preachers argue with their spouses. I never imagined. I since have learned different. Some parts of married life belong only to the couple, though, and it's uncomfortable to be an innocent bystander to be privy to them. Some things Gene and I would just soon not share with the rest of you, and our arguments being one of them. Not that we argue very often. We've sort of mellowed in our old age. Although I'll have to let you know, I was instructed after last Sunday's service to make a correction or addendum to the sermon from last Sunday. If you were here, you know I talked about my passions in life. I guess I had a glaring omission by not naming my smart and beautiful and irresistible wife as the number one. Did you sleep outside? Yes, in today's scripture, and we're only going to deal with one of those two stories. That's a loaded passage, but we're only going to deal with one of them. In today's scripture, we are like flies on the wall, overhearing a conversation between Jesus and a woman, a Syro-Phoenician or Greek woman. Now, Mark's gospel of the four was written the first. It was written before the others. And Mark does not offer much commentary or embellishment to his telling of the story. With Mark, if you read Mark's gospel and compare it to the others, Mark just seems to allow us to walk alongside Jesus and become like a fly on the wall to his conversations. In today's scripture, Jesus has gone out of town. Far out of town for travel in those days. The gospel writer says that Jesus is in the region of Tyre, a 3-day journey by foot from Jesus' hometown. We get the idea that Jesus is seeking a place for some R&R. You know that? Rest and relaxation. He's looking to get away for a few days. Jesus is tired. Mark, above all the gospel writers, presents Jesus to us in his full humanity. Jesus gets tired. Jesus gets hungry. Jesus gets burned out and aggravated. The crowds are demanding. Jesus, full of compassion and perfect in love, is still subject to having his last nerve plucked. Has anyone ever plucked your last nerve? You know, you just had one nerve left, and it got plucked, right? Can I confess something to you? We're all friends, right? Sometimes, as much as an exceptionally nice guy as I am, and as wonderful as you all are, some of you pluck my last nerve. And when your last nerve gets plucked, you don't always make the best decisions, do you? For when we're tired and when we're stressed out, our tendency is to fall back into old patterns and habits. And before we know it, things fall out of our mouths that sound just like the things we once said we would never say. Gene will say, "Oh, you sounded just like your dad right then." Or I'll say, "All right, Jane." That is Gene's mother's name. Bless her heart. Do you ever find yourself doing that, channeling your parents' voices? Jesus has gone to Tyre because he's stressed. And let me say about Tyre, it is a much different place from the area where Jesus has been raised as Joe and Mary's boy. You see, when you order iced tea in Tyre, it doesn't come sweet. And as the comic Jeff Foxworthy says about the northern part of our country, it's a place where they cook their tomatoes and eat their green beans raw. And the religion was different in Tyre from that of Jesus' hometown. For Jesus came from a place where Passover was a paid holiday and bacon was not served with the eggs. For Jesus is Jewish and Tyre is Gentile territory. Maybe it was worth the 3-day walk for Jesus because he thinks nobody will know him in Tyre, and he won't be inundated with requests for this and that. Jesus, can you do this for me? Jesus, can you get this for me? Jesus, let me tell you about my problems, okay? Jesus, do you know what my sister said to me? Jesus, can you take a look at my big toe? I think it might have an infection. Jesus, have you got anything for me? I need a bus ticket. I need a snack pack. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And the scripture says he entered a house in Tyre, and he didn't want anybody to know he was there. But then the punchline. But he could not escape notice. He didn't even have a cell phone. And yet he could not get away. There she was. This local woman from Tyre. A Gentile. Coming to this out-of-town Jewish rabbi. Her daughter is deeply troubled, burdened by an unclean spirit. Some of you know what it feels like to have a child whose life is a complete wreck. And you're desperate for answers. Somebody, please help. I talked to a mother just the other day. I had never met this woman before, but within less than a minute of our meeting, she was telling me about her son, who has an addiction to drugs, currently locked up in the county jail. The family, from all appearances, has plenty of resources, and I got the sense that they'd tried many different programs for him, and they had spent lots of money. I began to give my pitch about how much better it would be if, as a community, we would put lots more resources into treatment and recovery programs instead of incarceration. And the woman looked at me and she said, "I don't know. I don't know. It's the line. I don't know how to get over the constant lies." And she looked very tired to me. Mark says this Syrophoenician woman begged Jesus, "Please help my daughter." It's a universal plea. From one side of the globe to the other. From one side of town to the other. From those families who worry about their stock market investments to those families who worry about how they're going to get the alternator fixed on the car or pay the past-due power bill, it is a universal plea. Please help my daughter. Please help my son. Please help my brother. Please help my sister, my mom, my dad. His life is a wreck. And I fear that the next overdose, the next arrest, that will be it. This woman sounds desperate. And every parent in this room understands her agony. Jesus' answer to her may sound strange to us. Let the children be fed first, for it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. What does Jesus mean? What's he talking about? Did Jesus just call this woman a dog? And while for those of us who think more highly of our canine family members than our human family members, that may not sound so much like an insult. But in Jesus' culture, let me assure you, dogs were not highly regarded. And this is a term of disdain. Jesus' words here just don't sound very Jesus-like, do they? Where's the compassionate Jesus? Where's the what a friend we have in Jesus? Where's the Jesus is all the world to me, Jesus? Now, I want to take up for Jesus here. It's hard to be on your game and to be on call 24/7. Sometimes you just want to shut the phone off and turn the closed sign around to the heart of compassion and understanding mind. Several years ago, Jean and Olivia and I were on a vacation out of state. We were visiting family. We were at a Fuddruckers for lunch. You ever eat at Fuddruckers? Great burgers. I was wearing this T-shirt that it was supposed to be humorous, but the very first words of the T-shirt said, "I am a minister," and then it said all these things that ministers end up doing, you know. But the first words in bold letters, "I am a minister." And the waitress came to our table to bring us our food, and she sat everyone else's plate down before them with my plate still in her hand. She looked at me, and she looked at my T-shirt, and she said, "Are you a minister?" And I said, "Well, yes." And so for the next 20 minutes, she unveiled and unloaded her family burdens in great detail. All the while, I'm staring at my and onion rings growing cold in her hands. Now I know God very well may have put me there that day in that spot just for her. But after we got home, a few days after we got home, that shirt got dropped into the Goodwill donation. Let somebody else wear it and get their vacation day lunch hijacked. Okay? I know that does not sound very ministerial, but I get where Jesus is coming from here. Please help my daughter, Jesus. And Jesus, tired and stressed out, tries his best to screen out this woman's request by appealing to the cultural boundaries of his day that would have made a Jewish rabbi even talking to a Gentile woman, let alone helping her, an obvious no. Jesus uses this odd illustration of dogs and people and food to reaffirm the divisions of his day. I know we think our world is very divided today, and it is. We're in a divided world, people choosing up sides around all kinds of issues and movements and causes and casting those on the other side as the enemy. But in Jesus' day, the boundaries, believe it or not, were even more clearly drawn. Religious and economic and ethnic and gender lines, they were all very hard and fast, and their world was very divided. So Jesus' answer to the woman is no. No, I won't help you. Not now. It's not my time. You're not my people. Take your turn. Your number's not yet been called. Jesus is a no, at least for now. But the woman will not take no for an answer. The story takes a strange twist when the woman says back to Jesus, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. This Gentile woman presses this Jewish rabbi for a morsel of God's grace. Have you ever wanted so intently and felt so deeply that you needed a taste of God's grace, as does this woman? Now, I don't know how Mark, the gospel writer, came across this story. I have to think that Jesus was the one who shared the story. We have no evidence that anyone else was around to overhear what was happening between he and this woman. And I have this strong feeling that Jesus shares this story, even though he's not the hero at first in this story. The woman is really the hero. Her faith, her persistence, her stubbornness, her profound love for her daughter is what shines in this story. Her hunger for a taste of God's grace is what is celebrated in this story. So much so, Jesus is moved by her longing for hope and help and healing, and her faith that the God who brought the world into being and gave her daughter life in the very first place is a God who would not turn his back on her daughter's suffering. Jesus is so moved by this woman's passion and perseverance that Jesus changes his mind. And Jesus' no becomes God's yes. One commentator on this passage says, it's as if this Gentile woman tells Jesus, guess what, Jesus? God said yes to me. God said yes to me when God tore open the heavens. God said yes to me when God decided to show up in the wilderness rather than the temple. God said yes to me when you came here to this region of Tyre instead of spending all your time in Jerusalem. It's okay to be me, this Gentile woman, so get over yourself, Jesus. And he does. The Message translation says that Jesus was impressed with this woman. And he says to her, you're right. On your way. Your daughter is no longer disturbed. The demonic affliction is gone. And she went home, and she found her daughter relaxed on the bed. The torment was gone for good. You see, sometimes we've heard no so many times we can't recognize yes when it hits us upside the head. You see, we get messages from the time we enter this world, and we all entered the world the same way, through a birth canal, right? Some folks even believe we get messages before. Well, we're still in the womb. That baby knows what's being said. Now, the reality of life is that those messages are not always positive, and they're not always life-affirming, and they're not always value-instilling or worth-making. Those outside messages can take root in us, and they can become our internal voice. Yes, you are a beautiful child of God. Sometimes gets drowned out by, no, you're a worthless piece of shit. Sometimes the message, yes, you can make a positive difference in the world, can be taken over by, no, you have no voice or purpose. Sometimes the message, yes, you are loved. You are loved